Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the FamVestor Podcast. I'm your host, Sunny Burns.
And I'm your co-host, Sunmarie Burns.
So today we have a great guest, actually a couple of guests, and they're fellow podcasters, which is kind of awesome. We dig into their story about how they crawled out of $200,000 in debt. Right around when she was 26 years old and he was, I guess, 27. So it's a cool story. You know, we haven't really featured an episode about debt so much, so it's definitely something that we want to share with the audience and the baby steps they took to get out of that debt and now start to build a lifestyle of wealth and investing after crawling out of that. But before we get to that, we want to share some funny happenings that happened throughout the week. Our youngest son finally is getting the hang of potty training, so that's exciting for us. He's very proud of himself every time he goes. He gets everyone in the household, come look what I just did. So that's
very
kind of
been fun. Yeah. And our eldest son, he's trying to wrap his mind around Santa Claus.
Christmas time, his favorite time of the year. He's definitely a gifts, love language kind of boy.
Yes, and the other day we were driving in the car, and he says to me, Mommy, what would you like for Christmas? Just tell me anything you want for Christmas. I'll get you anything you want. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't really need anything. And he goes, I know what you need. You need a new icebox for the fridge. Your fridge is broken. Your icebox is broken. I'm going to tell Santa to bring me an icebox, and then you can have all the ice you want. So, yeah, don't buy a new icebox. I'm getting it for you. He almost views Santa like a mail-away catalog.
Whatever you want, just write it down and you'll get it.
So, that's been fun navigating that. We'll see how things go over when not everything on his list shows up under the tree. Yeah.
So anyway, a little bit of some fun we've been having with the family this week.
Right.
Well, without further ado, let's get to the show.
You're listening to the FamVestor Podcast. If you're looking to raise your family with intention, gain financial independence, and live a life of true freedom, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore together how to create thriving families, because strong families are the cornerstone for a world at peace.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the FamVestor Podcast. We're excited today because we have another podcasting couple on the show. So this is going to be exciting, a four-way interview. And so we have Denis and Katie on the show. Denis is an accountant full-time. Katie is a fourth grade teacher. And today we kind of want to talk about their journey digging out of $200,000 in debt. Katie moved in with Denis and he realized, these bills started coming in. And he realized that, after sitting down with her and they're going through their finances, that there was $200,000 there. So we really are interested in digging in with them, how they were able to pay that off in a year and a half's time. So let's all welcome to the show, Denis and Katie.
Hey, guys.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, thanks for being here, guys. So good to have you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and we're super intrigued by your story. It's definitely a common one we've heard of couples struggling through large amounts of debt, and a lot of couples actually don't know how to escape it. So we are really intrigued to learn how you managed to conquer your finances.
Well,
so tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so one thing not mentioned in the bio was sort of a little bit about Katie's backstory. So how she got into $200,000 worth of debt. Now, Katie did all the right things. By the book, you go to school, you study, you buy some cars, you buy a house, all the sort of regular run-of-the-mill stuff. But something went a bit wrong, right?
All right. So Denis is very politely beating around the bush. So I went to college. I had all my student loans. I did a really great job at avoiding them for a long time. I deferred them. I found this student loan payoff scheme directed towards teachers. So
Scam.
yeah, that was a nightmare. And then I also did the worst thing that anybody could ever do. I co-signed for a friend to buy a new car.
Oh boy.
And that co-signing came with $20,000 worth of negative equity. And honestly, at the time, I didn't really know what negative equity was. Although I, obviously assumed that it was not great with the connotation, but I didn't think that it would impact my life as much because, it was a big conversation. It was a really close friend, and they were like, please, like, I really need the help, and it'll be no problem to you. So I did it. And a few months later, obviously, you can probably assume where this story is going. A few months later, the friendship, just bottomed out, out of nowhere. It was just it was a done deal. And I was like, well, obviously we're not going to be speaking together anymore, but let's not forget this car that you have under my name. And they were like, oh, you mean the car that you bought me as a gift?
What?
Oh no.
And I was just like, I don't know. I hope you never get this feeling in your stomach, but I literally thought I was going to throw up and die at the same time. And I was like, what? No, it was not a gift. You pestered me to do this and help you, and you promised it would be no problem to me. You make more money than I do. You need to take care of this car. And so then I really started tracking if they were making the payments or not, and then they weren't, and I didn't want it to affect my credit.
Right.
So I was basically left with this option. I went to a lawyer and I got professional advice, which was probably, I obviously should have done this months before, but the lawyer said you either have to, they can either give the car to you and you have to take on all the debt, or they can take the car into their name only and they're going to have to sign for it and everything like this. Obviously, somebody who is bamboozling their friend to help them out dropped the car off in my mom's front yard in the middle of the night.
Oh boy.
So the only way I could, and this portion of the car whole escapade is still a little fuzzy to me, but when I went to trade in the car, because I had to get their name off the title or they could just come and take the car at any old time, the car dealership that I went to said that I had to buy a much more expensive car to be able to cover the negative equity on the car that was already owed.
That's where I'll jump in as the accountant.
I didn't know Dennis. This is years before I met Dennis.
So the thing is that Kate's got an asset that's in her name and someone else's name. So she could pay the entire thing off, and that other person could come and say, well, it's mine, and they would be right. So they could just take it. So to get out of it, she had to get their name off the car. So to do so, you have to go to the dealership and trade in the car and get a new car. But the dealership says, well, you owe $20,000 on this car. We're not going to sell you a cheap car because you have no collateral. So if you default, we can't come and get your asset and try and sell it and make some money and recoup our costs. So they forced her, well, no, not forced her, but they wouldn't sell her a car unless she bought a car that was more expensive. So in essence, that was the only way for her to get the car out of the other person's name and just into her name. So she literally bought a car right off the showroom floor, didn't even test drive it.
In fact, the guy told me, he was like, this car would qualify for you to be able to, get the name off the title. And I was just like, well, I guess that's the car then.
Oh, wow.
Man.
And at this point, I was graduated from college, so probably 26, 27. I was driving an '02 Corolla that my mom was very gracious. When I got my driver's license, she gave me a car, the '02 Corolla, and it was paid for. I'd never had a car payment. I'm pretty much a frugal person. I don't go shopping. I don't spend a lot of money. And now I've had this bomb literally dropped on me.
Oh my god.
And the guy was like, when we were doing the financing, you're in a lot of trouble when the financing guy at a car dealership feels bad for you. That's when I knew I really had a problem.
Oh,
And my payment ended up being $663 a month.
Ooh.
And I remember looking at my mom and I was like, how am I ever going to afford this? I'm a teacher. I barely make $1,000 a month, and that's not including gas for this like monster mobile. And if anything happens to it and insuring it and everything, I thought my life was over. I thought I was going to die.
That's
So-
crazy.
So Kate had a $50,000 loan on a $30,000 car.
No way. What was the car, by the way? Just interested.
A Honda Cross Tour. It was a
Okay.
nice car. It had so it kind of, if you're not, it's not like a super common car on the road. It looks like it couldn't make up its mind. It either wanted to be a car or an SUV. Like it looks a little bit of both. But it had heated seat. Like it was a nice car. It had all these like cameras and everything. It had like a right side view camera that like
all
you
the
didn't even
bells
have
and
to,
whistles, right?
everything. Everything. So nice car, but not worth $50,000.
No.
So but then, I'm really in this rut, and I'm teaching full time. I have this huge car loan, and I try to get ahead of it. So I start making like monster payments up front. And because I didn't think that I was like really bad with money, like I would admit, like I'm not like a financial expert like an accountant was, but like I knew enough like not to overdraft my account. I had great credit, and so I got a second job. And by this point, I was like, really, I love my family, but I was really tired of living at home. Rent is really expensive, and I rationalized like, all right, well, I can save for a down payment for a house, or I can rent right away. So I saved and worked really hard. I bought a cute little townhouse in Florida, which is where I lived. And it was like right when I bought the house is when I met Dennis. And Dennis thought I was pretty crazy and a little weird for buying a house as a single girl. But, it was great. And then finally, Dennis was contracted for his job in Tampa. And then the contract ended like months and months later, just long enough for us to like each other enough to like be sad that he was leaving, but still think that we could work it out. Right. So we did the long distance for a long time. And then finally it was Dennis invited me to come up and live with him in Virginia. And I was just like, I'm not so sure about this. Like, I've bought a house, I have my career, my family's here. Is this really a good move for me? And ultimately, my mom was like, if it's terrible, you can come back home. It's not a big deal. And so I came. I obviously didn't have a job right away. I came in the middle of the summer, and we used to go out to eat a lot more. And so one night we came home, we naturally have to walk through, like in any apartment building, you walk by the mailboxes. And I never check the mail, ever. Like, I probably check the mail like maybe once a month. Dennis is a habitual mail checker. And he goes to check the mail, and I know I don't check the mail for a reason. Like, nothing but bad news lays in that mailbox. So he goes to check the mail, and I was like, no, like it's late. Let's go to bed. Let's watch TV. Let's do anything but check the mail because I know it's in that mailbox. And so it turns into like kind of like that. Have you ever walked by that awkward couple that's like arguing but not arguing in like a public area?
Yeah, trying to keep it really down key.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was us. And so he gets the stack of mail out, and it's like a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon for Dennis and like 300 bills for me.
Oh, jeez.
And so then we go up, and this obviously lends to a lot of questions because my student loan is in there, my car payment is in there, my house mortgage payment is in there, which are all fine. Like I pay all of them, and like I said, I had good credit. It's not like I'm defaulted in anything. But Dennis gets all these like really technical questions, like, well, how long is your mortgage loan for? And what is your interest rate on your student loan? And none of which I knew any of the answers to.
And then I dropped the big one. Well, how much debt do you have in total?
Mm-hmm.
And Kate didn't have an answer.
I had no clue.
So how is this for you, Dennis? You know, you obviously are a smart financial guy, an accountant, and you know now you're just starting to live together, and you realize that you don't have the same financial understanding. What is going on in your mind at this point?
Yeah, I mean, like, I deal with really big numbers on a daily basis, so I'm a little bit desensitized to numbers. But that being said, it obviously was like, whoa, you know, this is still like, it seems like a lot.
It seems like it because of this.
Yeah, it is. And
This girl has a big price tag on her.
well, you know, that's the thing, like at the time it wasn't like super duper serious. I mean, she'd moved in, but you know, we were dating, like things could end. They could in like a scenario, like
Face.
no strings attached, you know.
Tell us how you really feel.
So, you know, like at that point I was sort of like, well, you know, she's got all this stuff, but does she understand what it means, and is she willing to do something about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me was really what was more important to me. I didn't care about the number that she had. I cared about what she would do about it when she understood the gravity of how much debt she had. And I took her student loan just as an example. And I was like, look, you owe $40,000 on your student loan. If you carry on the way you're going with your payments, by the time you pay this off, you would have paid back $80,000 because you're making minimum payments over the whole term. And you know, like the look of horror on her face was just like, it said everything. And there were a lot of tears, there were a lot of meltdowns. But you know, once we sort of got through that initial shock that Kate went through, when, you know, we literally put out all the bills, literally every single one. I'm like, next one. Put it into Excel. I made a nice big spreadsheet. And I added it all up, and she was just shy of $200,000 with the debt.
Geez.
And granted, like 100 of that was the home loan. So technically it was only 100 of real debt, but even still, you know, it's a big number of this debt that you essentially don't own any real assets for.
Right.
I mean, we have this car, but it's not a $50,000 car. It's, you know, a depreciating asset and a couple years old now. So at that
And
point,
had a dent.
yes, it did have a dent.
I
It was a very sore thing when she got that dent.
I'm sure.
She's like, that's $1,000 right there.
Yep. Wow. So I like that you in your relationship, you know, you're finding out this thing about each other, you know, the diverging understanding of finances. I like your perspective, Dennis, on trying to figure out, well, where is Katie's head when it comes to finances? She may not understand it, as a lot of people who are in debt don't really understand the gravity of it or the extent of it in the way that an accountant does, or someone who really understands how to run numbers. And I feel like the world of debt purposefully designs it that way. It's very hard to understand the implications of it. You know, you don't understand what deferred interest is, and snowball effect of your loan payments over time. Even for me, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around. Sonny's the math guy, and he understands it a whole lot more than I do. But I love your perspective of thinking, you know, once she comes to understand it, how is that going to affect her idea of expenses? She can continue to be a spender. Is that her nature? Or is she going to take charge of this and turn around this cycle? So I thought that was a really good focus point that you made there, rather than just freaking out when you discovered all of this debt. So tell us, what did you do when you sat down, ran all these numbers, and realized what you had, you know, sitting in front of you?
So the great thing about Dennis is he is like a problem solver. So he saw it and he was like, oh, this is a problem. I'm going to make a plan to solve it. And he gave me like this very like boom, 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 boom. this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to be out of debt. And if you follow what I tell you to do, then you will be out of debt in 3 years.
Wow.
And I'm very, I guess, literal, and I follow directions very well. Like, if you tell me what to do, I will do it. It's just when I'm like left to my own devices, I get like spinning around and then I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
But like if I have a plan, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
So do
can you describe that a little more, what the plan of attack was? Because we haven't covered debt much on this show, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners are relating very much to the story right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the best ways to tackle a problem is to understand the problem first. So the first step was really collecting all of Kate's debts and trying to figure out what was like, where is the easy wins, and where we're going to get how we're going to start the ball rolling, because really getting it rolling at first is the hardest part about getting into like serious debt payoff. It's just establishing almost like a routine in terms of like you're going to be disciplined, and every paycheck this much is going to go towards savings or whatever it is. So sort of trying to figure out exactly what our strategy would be was really the critical thing. So we sort of wrote it all down, and it was really like the house, the car, the student loan, and there was a small medical bill as well. And sort of looking at that, we're like, all right, well, the house is literally almost sitting empty. Like Kate did have a tenant in a 2-bedroom townhome, who was basically kind of breaking even on the mortgage, sometimes not. So we were like, all right, well, let's sell the house, because that's the biggest chunk of debt. Mm-hmm. So we sold the house, and we were very lucky the way we sold the house. I said to Kate, well, we next need to tackle this car loan, because $700 is ridiculous to pay over the next 7 years.
Right.
So I said to her, like, the car needs to be very high up on our priority list, and any extra money goes towards the car at this point.
Can I ask what the interest rate was on that car?
6.65%.
6.65. Okay.
Yeah. It could have been worse, but it was still pretty bad.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too crazy. I was talking to someone who was paying 19% interest, which is just
like I said, I had good credit.
Well, the guy also felt bad for you, to be fair. So
yeah, he
he organized the
deal. Again, when the financing guy at a car dealership feels bad for you, you have a problem.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's when you know you're in trouble.
Okay, so focus on paying down the car loan, and then
so getting rid of the car was really the real big win. So with the house, Kate bought it, about a year and a half before?
Yes.
Yeah.
I owned it for like 15 months.
Right. So during that time, she bought it for 100, and it appreciated to, I think, was it 120, 125?
Something like that.
So huge return in a year. She was very lucky. The area that she bought in was all of a sudden, there's lots of development around. Everyone wanted to move there.
Wow.
So she made almost $20,000, like once everything was said and done.
That's great.
And that just happened to be enough money
exact
that she
amount
to get
pay off
rid of
the car.
Wow, and that saved 7 years of $700 a month payments.
Yeah.
Right. So it was I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So I had a pretty hefty emergency fund. Like, I didn't come up to Virginia with nothing. Mm-hmm. So I had an emergency fund. So I did have this small medical bill. And so I just, instead of, kind of making like my $20 payments that they said I could do, I knocked it out and I paid that. So that kind of got the ball rolling. And then Dennis was like, you have to sell the house that I like killed myself to buy, and I was so proud of it. It was very emotional and hard for me to sell the house. So I flew down to Florida, I sold the house, and like Dennis said, by the grace of God, it was the same amount of money that I owed on the car, the difference. Mm-hmm. So I came home and we tried to privately sell the car. Nobody is going to buy a used car for like $30,000 cash. So I decided one day, I just woke up and I was like, let's take it to a car dealership. Let's see what they do. And right before that, I, of course, had to fix the major dent on the side of it. But so I got it fixed. We took it to get appraised, and it came in just at the right amount that I needed it to. He said, come back on Monday. We'll buy the car. We'll take over the deed, and, it'll be done.
It came out at 18. They offered you 18, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was in that state where I was like, no, like it's not really going to end like this. Like it's going to be much more dramatic and awful than just bring it and pay it off. And so I did what the guy said. I brought it in on Monday. They looked it over again. And he goes, let's draw up the paperwork. And I said, okay, but before I do that, I need to wire you some money because I do owe more than what you're giving me. And he goes, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. I need to send you $18,000. And the guy just looked at me like, honey, no, we're paying that. I was like, no,
we're gonna pay you $18,000. And she's like, no, I'm gonna pay you $18,000 to take my car.
Yes.
Oh man.
So I had to walk like 5 blocks in the cold because it was like November time to a bank to get a money order. And I walk there, and I'm excited and nervous at the same time. And then I go to get the $18,000 money order, and the lady wants to charge me $10 for it. And I was like, no, like I'm spending $18,000 today. I've been a customer here forever. Give it to me. And she brought the manager out and everything. And he was like, here, just go.
Nice.
And
There's a win.
Yes. And I've never held onto a check so hard in my entire life. I was like, I cannot lose this. So I take it in, and of course, like they're doing construction, so we're in like a tent, and I hand the guy the money order, and he hands me, like the license plate and like my keychain, and he's like, okay, well that's good, I think you're all settled here. And I was just like that's it, like that's all I have to do.
Wow.
And apparently, like I was walking back to the metro, and I get a phone call from the car dealership. And I was just like, oh.
Here it is.
Yeah. And I ended up, I left something like silly there, like my water bottle. And the guy was like, oh, do you need your water bottle? And I was like, no, keep it. I'm never going to. And I rode home like the whole time in shock. And then ever since then, we really focused on the student loan.
That's crazy. So how did this feel, this kind of journey of progressively, unloading this massive amount of debt that's been on your shoulders, and just, slowly getting rid of that medical bill, and then getting rid of that, house, a mortgage payment, and then getting rid of that car loan? How did that feel to you?
So the house and the car and the medical bill all felt very easy to get rid of. Easier in essence. Mm-hmm. And then I'm at the student loan, which was like $40,000, and now this is like $40,000 in cash that I have to like figure out. The year came up that the new school year was starting and things were going well. I was like, I think I need to get a full-time teaching job. I want consistent income. And then Dennis was kind enough, he covered all living costs, so all I had to do was really focus on my student loan. And I had this goal to have my whole student loan paid off by my birthday, which was in May. And this was, I don't know, sometime in December when we had one of our conversations. And I had been making payments, the biggest payments I could make at the time. And he said, in order to make your goal of paying off your student loan by your birthday, you need to make $3,000 a month payment.
Yeah, so Kate was pretty adamant about it has to be paid off by my birthday. And, like I ran the numbers again, and I was like, based on how much money you bring home, it's not going to happen. Like, you're a teacher, and we got to be realistic about what we can afford here. And she said, no, I'm going to pay it off by my birthday. And I was like, okay, well, we're $1,000 short every month.
Yeah, because $3,000 a month, that's $36,000 a year.
Yeah. So I'm like, you need to make an additional $1,000 a month to make up the shortfall. How are we going to do this? And at that point, Kate got really serious about side hustling and trying to make extra income to really get more and more money and sort of really get ahead on her student loan.
So I did. And as the more that I paid off, it became more of like, it sounds weird, but like an addiction. Like I could not wait to make another student loan payment. And I got so accustomed to making these $3,000 a month payments that, if birthday money came in, or if, my mom would feel a little extra generous and just send me like $100 because my mom's like that, I would put it all towards my student loan. And, once I finally paid off my student loan, it was, I hate to say, like a little bit like now what am I going to work towards?
Yeah.
Because it became such like a routine. Like I have become so used to, not buying things that I really want. Like we live across the street from the mall and we live right above a world market, and, buying things here is really easy. And I've just made it a habit. If I go in, I wouldn't bring any money with me.
Wow.
And I would just go and I would look, and it was a whole mind shift change that I really had to go through.
So it's interesting because it sounded so strategic, this plan of paying off all this debt. It wasn't just, just live very frugally and pay off more and more and more and more. It was, okay, well, this asset or this item has all this debt surrounding it. Let's get rid of it. So that's a really cool, thing that you kind of walked us through. But what, in terms of like frugality or trying to increase that savings rate to make those, last student loan payments and things like that, what kind of practical tips do you have there? And Dennis, were you also kind of lowering your cost of living to match Katie and like support her through that, or was I don't know, what was the lifestyle there, I guess?
Yeah, so from our lifestyle, I mean, I know this sounds terrible, but as an accountant, I always kind of thought that I'll pay my way out of whatever, and if I need to buy something, I'll just make more money. And that kind of had been my attitude towards life and money up until the point that we really got serious about money, and we started the podcast and learning about stuff which I already knew about, but it's a case of do as I say, not as I do. I knew what to do, I just wasn't doing it. So in us diving into personal finance together as a couple, we really started learning a lot of good practices that have sort of really helped us lower our costs. Like right now we have a 36-hour rule. So if you really want something, you're not allowed to buy it for 36 hours. And we find that that's enough time to sort of mull it over in your head. And, like we will talk about it for the full, like 3 days or however long that is. But, we will, it's enough time to have that, but do I really need this? And that for me has been like a really big part of how I've managed to lower my cost. But yeah, I would say apart from that, making a lot more money. Like Kate's having gone and gotten extra jobs and literally a million different side hustles. I mean, we haven't really touched on any of that, but it's been everything from Airbnb to charging bird scooters, to shipping books for a writer. What else? Yeah, tutoring.
It really it came down to really learning how to manage your time better, because you're still working full time, and working full time comes with like you still have to do laundry and you have to go grocery shopping and you have to have at least a little bit of downtime for yourself. But now you have compounded where you need to make all this extra money. So I just got really strategic and purposeful in everything that I did. And the best thing it was another gift from God, that I had a friend that was on our podcast months before. He just randomly reached out. He was like, hey, I need some help. It's temporary. Can you help me out? And that temporary job has been like for 1.5 years now.
Wow.
And it's very consistent. It's every day. I do a little bit. And, that was a huge help. And then I kind of just in conversation with coworkers, telling one of my coworkers, I'm paying off my student loan. And, when you talk about your student loan, everybody goes, oh yeah, my student loan.
Right.
So like immediately opens up the conversation. So that I would talk about my student loan and how I'm side hustling with this other person and how I love side hustling. And, she's like, well, actually, I have this little girl that I tutor that I can't tutor anymore. If you're interested, I'll pass your name along. Oh, wow. And it was kind of like through a networking of like that. And I've also been tutoring her for the last year, roughly a year. So right now, even though all my student loan, everything's paid off, I now am still consistently, working as a virtual assistant and tutoring. And when I tell people, yeah, I have 2 side hustles and a full-time job and I podcast, they're just like, oh my goodness, like how do you have time for anything? But through really purposeful time management, I feel like we handle it really well.
Yeah.
Like our days are not nearly as busy as what it probably sounds like.
So where do you find the time between your 9 to 5 to do these side hustles? Is it in the evenings? Is it speckled over your breaks throughout the day? Or how do you balance that time management? The weekends?
Yeah, I wish I could do it like during my breaks in the day. But it is all evening work. I tried to wake up early to do my VA work, to kind of spread it out, and that pattern did not hold up for me. I don't like to get up, especially when it's cold. So I do it at night, and Tuesdays and Friday nights, the whole day is very long because I work all day, and then I go and tutor, and then I come home and I do my VA work. And thankfully Dennis is really good at picking up the slack for everything else on those days. And I just mentally prepare on Tuesday morning, like it's gonna be a long one, I better have an extra cup of coffee.
Right. I love the fact that you are not afraid to pick up the side hustle. You're not taking the fact that you have a job and saying, oh, well, that's all I can do. This is all I'm making. This is kind of my limit. I'm just going to have to muddle through it somehow, and just letting life unfold. But you're being proactive and you're making the most of your time management. You're not using an excuse to say, oh, well, I already do too much. I can't fit anything else in. Where there's a will, there's a way. And you clearly have the will, and you have found the ways, the creative ways outside of your day job to supplement where needed. And that's helped you tremendously through your debt payoff. And now that you're done with that, just through savings, growth. I did want to touch back on a question for you. For our listeners, why, and this could go to either Katie or Dennis, why do you feel that paying off your debt in lump sums is more beneficial than just continuing with the month-to-month minimum balance, or perhaps a slightly increased month-to-month payoff? Why would you, if you owe $60, not pay $100 a month? Why would you just do it all in a lump sum? For some listeners, they may not understand that, so I'm curious to know the logic there.
Yeah, so the big thing is that it's one word, that's just interest. If you are not making full payments when they are due, you're going to be paying interest. And look, maybe you get lucky and you're on a 0% APR credit card for a little bit of time, but that's going to run out at some point. And, they will reach a point where you don't qualify for any more offers. And if you're in the habit of not making these full payments, you're going to be paying interest. And the problem isn't the 1 month you miss. The problem is the habit that you form. And in always making late payments, it's going to cost you literally hundreds of thousands of dollars over a long period of time when it all adds up. And the same goes for your savings as well. It works in reverse too. It isn't about, just saving as little as you can. It's about saving as much as you can. And obviously you can't really be serious about your saving while you have debt. But once you're out of debt, flip it around and be like, okay, well, now that I'm saving everything that I can, now that I'm paying myself first, your money is working much harder for you because you're allowing it the time to grow. And that's really where wealth is made. The same with debt. That's how you don't pay off debt and save thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's taking advantage of compounding. And they, who said it? It was, or was it Einstein? It might have been Einstein. That interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And
Einstein,
who,
It was Einstein.
yeah, those who understand it, I'm literally butchering this quote.
Those who understand
Those who understand it,
earn it.
and those who don't pay it.
Right.
So on that note, can you give in a short synopsis an explanation of what interest is, how it works? How
Yes.
does interest work?
So I'm going to, after you go through like a major debt payoff, if you really look around, you can kind of see like little debt nuances or interest nuances all over the place. So I'll give this as an example. So let's say you are digging a hole at the beach, right? Everybody has dug a hole at the beach and you really want to get like the deepest hole you can. But you have that pesky like side sand like leaking back in. And it's just like making it harder. That pesky side sand is interest.
Okay. So it's like you're making a step forward, but you're only going a half step back because of the interest building over time. You're still continuing to build late fees on your overall sum. You've paid off a small chunk of it, but everything else is still accruing interest in the meantime. Is that correct?
Like her $50,000 car, I'm sure if she just was on regular track paying that 6.5% interest rate, she probably would have paid the $100,000, at double the purchase price at the end of it or something.
Yep.
Probably.
Exactly.
And sadly, when I first got the car, I was like, I'm going to drive this car until I die. Like, I'm going to take my kids to college in this car. So I probably would have.
Yeah, so, now, it's an incredible story of you paying off this debt, and then now it sounds like you're continuing this side hustle, continuing this high savings rate and increased income. What are you doing with it? And, you're a podcast host on this financial topic. What strategies have you inherited? And, what are you guys doing?
So, we just got married. So a lot of
Congratulations.
Thank you. So right when we finished paying off my student loan, we went hardcore into saving for the wedding because we absolutely obviously refused to go into debt for the wedding.
Awesome.
That's not an option. And now that all that is done and behind us, we are saving for our first house.
Wow.
Nice. And what's your plan for your house? Do you want to buy one outright? Do you plan to do multifamily? What are you thinking there? Do you have an idea yet?
So many ideas.
Yeah, we have lots of ideas right now. We are not 100% sure where we're going to go, but we're putting down a minimum of 20% either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more you put down, the better. You have more equity in the property from the get-go, and then it works in your favor.
And then the 20%, you always avoid the PMI. And
exactly.
So tell us about you are now financial coaches, if I'm correct, right? On your website, you help other couples who are going through a similar path of trying to overcome debt. Tell us a little bit about that adventure that you're going on now, helping others.
Yeah, so one thing we've already learned over the course of doing the podcast, and we're just shy of 220 episodes now, so we've spoken to a lot of people.
Right. Wow.
And heard a lot of stories, and in a lot of people coming on the show, you chat to them about their debts, and it's always interesting having people on the show that are in debt or in the middle of a payoff, and you sort of pick their brains and you sort of see how did they get there and what are they doing about it. And one thing that we found is that it is so common to be in debt, especially along millennials. It's almost like the plague of our generation that, people struggle to manage money. And we're also the generation that is scared of the stock market, which means we're not investing our money, which means we're not getting compounding, which has a very big knock-on effect for when we want to retire one day.
It's also just all the instant gratification, it's just like, and everything you can finance. Hey, that couch looks sweet and I could finance it, don't have to pay anything for a year. And it's insanity.
Yeah, but and also on that as well, we're sort of moving into this microeconomy where everything is pay per month, and I say that working for a SaaS company, which is exactly what it is, but it's a good business model. And the thing is that as a consumer, you become reliant on it. And I'll call out your Netflix, all those sort of streaming services, your cell phone plan, just everywhere you look, you can pay for something in some kind of a subscription model. And even Amazon does a very great job of, you need dishwasher detergents? Subscribe now and save 40%. And you're like, wow, that sounds like I'm saving so much money. But you're burdening yourself with this payoff over a longer period of time. And that's a very big problem that we see a lot of people facing. It's just they take on too much and they don't realize that they can cut all that out. And the more you cut, the more you save. The more you save, the quicker you retire, or the quicker you have financial independence. And
Right.
ultimately, once you have financial independence, the world's your oyster.
Right. And you bring up a good warning for others is just the easy ability to over leverage yourself on these small little nominal expenses in your life. They really do add up when you have all of these reoccurring subscriptions and bills and things, and it seems like, oh, that's just 10 a month, oh, that's just
Right.
50 a month. It doesn't sound like a big number, and then when you break it down to the finite number that you actually bring in on a monthly basis, it's very easy to go from living within your means to living way outside your means, just through these decisions that weren't thought through all the way on their impact.
Right, exactly. And also that power of compounding as well. You have to take the opportunity cost of not having that money in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And, the general rule we apply is like a multiple of 8 or 9. So if you look at a coffee, that's like maybe a $5 coffee. That's actually not a $5 coffee. Take a multiple of 8 or 9 on that, you're suddenly buying like a $30 or $40 coffee. And, it really makes you think, is that really worth it? And am I getting the gratification that I want from the money that I'm spending today?
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that down the road, you're going to be missing out on something by spending today.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I mean, you can end up taking frugality to a complete extreme and not spend any money. Look, life is to be enjoyed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that element of, finding satisfaction from your money. And when you can find a happy balance, you'll live a happier life.
Right.
Awesome.
Right. Well said.
So on your journey, going through this, was there any, I know, Katie, Dennis kind of guided you, laid out that plan that you followed step by step, but was there any other resources that really helped or that you've discovered along the way that you think would be good for our listeners to hear?
Yes, I have fallen in love with little change saving apps. One that I've really enjoyed is Digit.
Mm-hmm.
So what Digit will do, it will take little bits of money out of your account every day or every couple of days. And you can set all of your guidelines so you don't overdraft your account or anything. And it'll roll it all into one account. And then a lot of times I would save it for, an extra bulk payment. So last year, for example, around Christmas time last year, I used it as a Christmas present towards myself, and I made an additional $1,000 payment. So for December, I made a $4,000 student loan payment.
Oh, wow. So it just slowly deducted little nominal amounts from your account, and then in the end, you have this sum that you didn't think about, but you were saving the whole while.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's also an app specifically that does that for student loans, and it's called Changed. It's like Change Ed
Education.
Yes. So that's a really great one. And then I also, when I was paying off my debt and wanting to start investing, but like we said, millennials don't typically, I was really skittish about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not comfortable with just putting all of my, $25 I was willing to invest into Robinhood, which is the stock market type app that a lot of people use.
Right.
I use Stash. Stash is another app where they kind of hold your hand while you are learning how to invest, and I've really enjoyed that. And I think I even still have my Stash account where I have $5 a week just taken out of my account, and $5 and $5, and then the compounding. And actually, now that I think about it, I haven't checked that account in a long time, so a little curious to see how much is in there. But those are probably my 3 or 4 favorites right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that account educates you in terms of learning about investing?
Yes. So Stash they have a whole educational platform. So they write articles on it. There are videos, I think. And then there's just little places where you can ask questions and stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool, because I think that is a daunting thing, is learning about the stock market and how to get into it. Some people want to be into it, but they don't know anything about it and don't know where to start. So something like that, start small, read the tutorials, gain the educational tools from that, can help you educate yourself and become more confident in it.
Definitely.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, I actually have one more tool for you guys, and that's a pen and a piece of paper. And how you use that tool is you write down your goals. And I would say that that has been critical to our success. Documenting what you want to achieve, over what period you want to achieve it, and regularly checking in with someone, and like being able to see how far you've come and address if you're not on the track to meet your goal, how you're going to get there, basically.
Okay.
That has been critical to our success in terms of managing to pay off so much debt in such a short amount of time. It's just been goal setting, and you're 100% more likely to reach your goals if you write them down. And if you tell a friend regularly and check in with them, you're another 200% more likely. Like
Wow.
the odds are totally in your favor if you actually are active about your goal setting. So I would highly advocate that.
Yeah, I think there's something about putting a goal down on paper, or even just writing out your financial snapshot on paper, that really allows you to wrap your mind around it and come to grips with how you're going to tackle it. So that's a very good point you make there. Just the actual action of doing it, not trying to keep it all balanced in your head, but somewhere you can like physically look at it, hang it on the wall, and be reminded of it. And again, you bring up accountability partners, which I think is huge too, because when only you know about it, it's very easy to let yourself slide with your own personal excuses. When you bring an accountability partner in, as you said, your chances of success grow infinitely.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely very well said. So, Katie, Dennis, thank you so much. When people hear this story, hear your journey, what do you hope they get inspired about?
I hope that they just start. When I first started, I felt a lot of shame because I was older feeling than what I felt like I should have been. I felt like I should have, by almost 30, really having, my life kind of under control and having a plan for things. And apparently I didn't. And I felt ashamed telling people, I'm, 29 and I have all this debt, and, I don't have a job right now. So I hope that they get, just start. Even if you make a little bit of progress at first, it can have a snowball effect. And if you start off slow, you can pick up your pace later.
Very good point there.
Awesome. Well, Dennis, Katie, if people want to, listen to your podcast, can you explain a little bit of what it's about and how to get in touch with you if they have questions?
Sure.
So Chain of Wealth is a money podcast focused on millennial money issues. So we tackle a lot of stuff like student loans, buying your first home, learning how to invest, all those kind of stories. We interview a lot of inspirational guests on our show. We literally have a massive catalog of over 200 episodes. So you can literally take your pick of whatever tickles your fancy.
Nice.
Well, awesome. Thanks for joining us on the FamVestor podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great
Thank
talking
you.
to you both.
Thank you for having us. We really love coming on the show.
Okay, have a good one.